Just wanted to say thank you all for being patient and waiting. It took a little bit longer to make this video due to waiting for artwork, but now that that's done, without further ado, please enjoy.
Unless you think you can prove me wrong? Maybe we should just settle this one-on-one. But where? Oh, I know. How about up there?
My name is Aaron the Dragon, and I am here with a special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Sean Chiplock. I go by Sonic Mega Online. I am a professional voice actor who many may know, particularly in the furry community, as the voices of Revali and Teba and the Great Deku Tree in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity. Based out of California, been doing this shindig for just over 15 years at this point, and very happy to be here tonight. Thanks for making time for me.
And it's very nice to have you here too. I appreciate you taking your time to do this. What would you say, or who would you say, inspired you to start voice acting?
Oh man. So what inspired me to start voice acting was discovering basically the recording process behind the scenes video that I found while I was browsing Adult Swim's website. It had Troy Baker, if you recall back when he used to do anime and wasn't just like the biggest thing in video game history.
Yeah.
Was recording for Able Night Road in this anime called Trinity Blood. And even though I was like practicing what we would consider voice acting, I hadn't really understood it to be a thing that people actually did until I saw this real life human being talking at the exact same time that on another camera it was showing the scene that was being dubbed, and hearing his voice in real time become the character on screen. I was like, oh damn, this is a real thing. This is what people do in this career. And I was just immediately enraptured. I just wanted to be a part of it. I didn't understand what the next step was, but whatever it took, I wanted to be involved. Once I started getting involved, it wasn't long before I found people who I don't want to say idolized, but really respected for different qualities. For example, Kari Walgren has an amazing range, between Saya and Blood Plus, Rain Sage and Tales of Symphonia, Haruko and Fooly Cooly were the main examples back then. I also really respected Liam O'Brien for his ability to play very focused, very committed, very intense roles, whether it was Dis the Rose in Tales of the Abyss, Grimoire Vise in Nier. I'm trying to think of other... I actually eventually took over for a character that he had played. He was the original Navarre in Shin Megami Tensei 4, but then when the sequel, Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse, came out, I was brought on to voice Ghost Navarre. So it was a very stressful moment for me because I was basically putting on the shoes of someone that I revered as a template actor when I started out. And then, of course, how can you talk about inspirational voice actors without bringing up Steve Bloom? The guy is so incredibly talented, but also so incredibly humble and down to earth and appreciative of his fans. And I took that to heart almost immediately. I had that idea of, I hope that no matter what opportunities I get, no matter how much of a quote unquote celebrity I end up becoming, I still doubt I fall into that sphere yet, that I never let it get to me such that I forget what makes my career possible and I become ungrateful for the people who make it a career that I can pursue. I just hope I can always be high energy and enthusiastic and authentic to folks who take the time out of their day to interact with me and share their praise with me for what it is I do.
So, for your acting career and stuff, you know how some voice actors go to school or they have a voicing coach? Did you have any of that?
Yes and no. So I definitely did not have formal training in the way that you might imagine, going to a theater school and taking specific courses. But I did try my best to stay involved in voice acting throughout my entire college curriculum. So I was, all 4 years that I was there, I was taking part in student-run groups. Like there was a sexual assault and education or peer education group that would go around campus and do performances about, various sexual health topics. I did radio plays in the local Kalamazoo All Ears Theater group that met up a couple times a semester. I was always online on places like Voice Acting Club trying to build rep with future colleagues and, get in touch with independent clients and animators. Um, Early on in my career, I was fortunate enough to be taken under the wing of the actor Devin Mack. Many people may not know this, but Devin Mack is a Canadian actor who was in Dragalia Lost and recently got to announce that he's the voice of Sonic in the Sonic Prime series that's coming out.
Mhm.
And I guess it seems unbelievable to me to even say this, but I guess at the time he just really respected the drive and the commitment and the energy that I had and was willing to take me under his wing and just kind of teach me the ropes and a very speedy method. So it's thanks to him that I learned in about 5 months what I imagine would take a lot of people 5 years if they were just roughing it on their own. So it was just this whole hodgepodge mix of experiences that I internalized and used to continuously improve myself. And now that I live out in California, I look for opportunities in workshops and seminars, from learning from my own colleagues and their performances. I do my own stream channel where I'm streaming 5 days a week, usually between 2 or 3 different games. And if there's no voices, then I am dubbing them to practice. If there are voices, then I am listening to them to study. And so every day is either another chance to perform or to learn. And I try to do my best not to let any day go to waste.
So, speaking of that, what would you say was one of the hardest things to overcome coming into the voice acting industry?
Well, one of the hardest things coming into the voice acting industry is just not immediately giving up. Because unless you happen to already have extensive training when you come in, let's face it, you're probably not going to be that good. And I mean I'm saying that as someone who also was not really that good. Like, you can go to my profile on Newgrounds because I has pretty much the same username as I have on Twitter, and you
Mhm.
can find animations that I voiced for back in like 2013, 2014. And I guarantee that it's not going to sound anywhere near as refined as I would consider myself to be today. And I say that even now, knowing that there is so much more I have to learn, so much more improvement I have to make of myself. But that's where the passion has to carry you. It has to be something that you want to be a part of so badly that you try out for 10 things, get rejected 15 times, and you still have the same amount of interest, the same amount of drive, where you're like, all right, on to the next one. This is kind of jumping the gun a bit, but I talk about how when I first auditioned for Breath of the Wild, I didn't know it was for Breath of the Wild because of the way it was codenamed and like marked up, and certain parts were confidential.
Mhm.
I actually thought it was for a Dragon Quest installment, just because of the way certain characters were named and the types of accents that they were looking for. When I got the callback, by the time I did the callback, I realized what it was for. I had put 2 and 2 together based on other things that I'd learned online. And I had that moment of, there's no freaking way, like, is it actually for this? But when I did accept that it was probably for this, I didn't let, like, the immense pressure of the fact that it was for what could be a voiced entry in the Zelda series scare me off. There was every chance I could have gone, oh my God, how is someone like me worthy of being a part of the Legend of Zelda series? I didn't even play most of the games since Twilight Princess. I'm not a true fan. But instead, I took the mentality of, hey, I was good enough to get a callback. I clearly have some strong choices I can make for these characters. They wouldn't ask for me back if they weren't interested. So why not,
Mhm.
I remembered the story of the guy who said he was asking for tips on how to get involved in game development in Japan, even though he was an American and spoke mostly English at the time. And 10 years later, he got to work on a massive project as part of the Japanese dev side. And it was just that same kind of thing of, why not? Why can't you be that person? Daisy Ridley wasn't heard of prior to booking Rey Skywalker in Star Wars, but now she's, the face of the Abrams trilogy. So it's about letting your love of the craft carry you. And if it turns out that you don't love it as much as you thought you did, that's fine. It's okay to try things out and then go, you know what, this isn't working for me the way that I was hoping it would be. As long as you're willing to accept that, just as a matter of trying different things throughout your life, some you'll really connect with and some you won't. And if this turns out to be something that you really identify with, then you got to hold on to that and never stop phoning it in or just coasting, because it will show in your voice. I'm not trying to paint voiceover as something special, but this isn't like a lot of office 9-to-5 jobs where as long as you come in and do the basic thing that you need to do your job, then you'll get your paycheck. If your heart's not in it, if your mind's not in it, if you're not committed to it, it will show through in your voice, and you're only going to be hurting yourself.
So, since you were talking about that, what's your opinion on how, for example, when they got the characters for like Grand Theft Auto 5 and stuff, what's your opinion on the fact that instead of going with known Hollywood names, they went with people that were barely known, and then now, because they did something like that, now they're widely known?
Well, you can look at it from a couple different facets. We'd have to dig deeper and understand why they made the casting choice that they did. First of all, I am all for casting whoever is the best fit for the role, as long as it doesn't lock someone else out of an equal opportunity casting. Because I know that a lot of people like to bring the debate up of, well, if the best person for the role should be cast, then why do you have a problem with white actors being cast as people of color roles? And that's different because white people have had an overwhelmingly unfair advantage when it comes to casting opportunities. But that's a whole different thing that we can get into another time. So on the one hand, I got to ask, did they decide to cast these people because they are not actors? Because it is very well known that there are all kinds of cases where people who are not studied, practiced, historied voice actors end up giving a much more authentic, much more human, much more grounded read for a role because they haven't had the chance to develop these acting habits, quote unquote, that lead to them giving particular types of reads. I think of the creator of Mau Mau, who ended up also voicing Mau Mau. And part of it was because he understood the character so well, being the creator of the series, but also he never fancied himself a professional voice actor. So it means that he was able to just give this off-the-cuff, realistic, authentic performance for Mau Mau that might have been harder to do if you had a, established professional VA trying to give like a clean, grungy read, or trying to give like good pacing, good diction. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Especially for something like Grand Theft Auto. If you want realism, you're going to want gang members. You're going to want people who live on the streets. They're not going to be, most of them are not going to be eloquent. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. What I mean is, you want to represent people from low-income neighborhoods who may have not have had the opportunity to get, a higher education. You want to represent people who have developed a certain dialect because that is the way that people talk on the streets, or, within Los Angeles or within Chicago or within New York. And so hiring people who have been in actual gangs, hiring people who have grown up in the suburbs or grown up in the alleys or grown up in lower income areas can help provide an authentic experience, especially if they are practiced in that dialect as well. So whether, I don't know whether it was the third point I was going to bring up is maybe they deliberately did it in order to give back to those communities, because obviously whoever's recording for that game is going to get a paycheck. And at the time, I believe the day rate for union projects was something like $900 something, like $956.75, something like that. Could be wrong. I'd look it up. But anyone who comes in and does that recording is going to get paid that rate. So it could have been a 1-2 punch of, hey, let's get people who have actually lived these lifestyles, who have actually been in these situations to record for these characters. And then also we are helping give back to the community because they can take the money that they make from these sessions and they can, help out their family, they can help out their community, they can afford better things for themselves. So I'm all for it, as long as there is a good intent behind it, as long as there's an educated intent behind it, if it works, it works,
Still going on the topic of voice acting, what would you, if you could give one piece of advice for anyone wanting to come in or start voice acting, what would it be?
Don't. I mean, it sounds like a joke, but the reason why I say don't is because how you respond to that is probably the first step. Because if I, as an established actor, am telling you it's too stressful, it's not worth it, you're always going to be fighting for fairer rates because people want to exploit you. There's certain parts of it that can be drama like high school. And your response to that is, I don't want to be a part of that. Then good, you've just saved yourself the trouble. But if your response to that is, I don't care, I'm still interested, I'm still going to go for it, well, good. Now we can actually start talking about next steps, because it all ties back to what I said about that personal interest and that passion. This is a very self-driven career. You have to be willing to make the time and the money and the effort investment to update your demos, to sign up for workshops, with many of which are the only means of getting feedback. It is very, very difficult to get free feedback from established professionals in this industry. And you have to commit to studying the types of roles that you want to perform for. If you want to be able to perform accents, you need to learn and practice them. If you want to be in a certain medium, you need to be constantly listening to that medium. If you want to perform for video games, you got to be playing video games. If you want to be in commercials, you should be listening to the radio to commercials. Most chances that you get, you should be, if you want to be in Western animation, then you, by God, had better be watching the modern day cartoons that are coming out, like, Gumball and Steven Universe, Infinity Train, a lot of these independent animations that are getting picked up by studios, because that is what the current trend is. And then you also need to be forward thinking, where you're looking for what trend is starting to develop, so that by the time it becomes the popular thing that everyone wants, you are already ahead of the curve. The example I give is about TV commercials, or especially radio commercials. During the 90s, early 2000s, it was about being hip and radical, the Y2K craze going on. Early 2000s, it was more of the acting like you're this person's best friend and you're telling them a private conversation. Now it's kind of leaned the other way, where you aren't pretending that you know them, but you just have such a casual, relaxed cadence that it doesn't feel like you're trying to sell something to the other person. And let me tell you, it is hard as balls to cover a read that is both off the cuff, nonchalant, totally casual, while also emphasizing every other key term and company corporate jargon word that the client really wants you to make sure that you hit, because it's super important to their branding. But make sure you don't sound like a practiced actor. You need to sound like a real person. So it's extremely frustrating at times. And even now, even though I feel like I've established myself in this career, I am constantly discovering other actors and other performances that are just so far beyond where I consider myself to be, that I have to struggle mentally, emotionally, and spiritually with understanding how much farther I have yet to go, how much more I still have yet to learn, and accepting that not only am I capable, but that I am willing, and then actually making the time and the effort to make it happen. So if all of that, what I just said, sounded super daunting and super complex, then you might want to take some time and give some serious consideration as to whether you want to walk this path. But if your response to all of that is still great, so where do I start, then you're on the right track.
So, speaking of that, with how many acting roles you've gotten from different animes to video games and stuff, what would you say was one of your favorites that you've gotten?
Well, there are lots of reasons why I'm proud of the different roles that I do. For example, Reen Schwarzer from the Trails of Cold Steel series being a recurring protagonist across 4, if not 5 games at this point. Or Subaru from ReZero being highs and lows of emotional complexity. Revali just being an asshole and being very difficult to figure out the cadence that I wanted for him at first. But I always worry about getting too big for my britches and about becoming complacent and being like, oh, well, this role I did recently was fun, but it wasn't as spectacular as this role I did several years ago. Nothing has topped that. And beyond that, I also struggle at times with jealousy and envy, and I don't ever want that to overtake the love that I have for this career and replace it with anger and bitterness. So instead of having a favorite role, I try to find something about every role that I do that I can take home and be appreciative of and cherish. Whether it's a milestone that I accomplished, or a challenge that I overcame, or something that I just knew that I was going to knock out of the park and I got to showcase one of my big strengths. But that is essentially how I keep myself humble in this industry, and how I keep myself interested in everything that I take part of, because every gig not only is a chance to tell a new story, but every job that I book is a job that someone else didn't. And I never, ever want to forget that fact. And I never want to become entitled to the fact that I have booked the jobs that I've booked. And I want to give them the time, attention, and respect that they deserve, because if it wasn't me, it was going to be somebody else. So I had better prove that I was one of the best choices for that role.
What would you say your opinion on the voice industry in general is like?
Like my general opinion of the industry?
Yeah, just a general opinion of it, just like
Oh
the
man,
total.
it's such a broad question. I wouldn't even know what to where to begin. Like, I want to say it's definitely more progressive than it was before, and that's not to say it was terrible, but just as the natural flow of things as members of the new generations are getting into the industry, and a lot of them have more progressive views. And I mean, Los Angeles and California in general have always been a pretty progressive hub of the United States, and and I mean a lot of stuff comes out of that hub.
Yeah,
So
it does.
I mean, that's where Disney, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, most of the anime studios, like it is the place. So I'm not surprised that some of that uh, progressive mindset has leaked into the industry from there as well. Um, I feel like there's more opportunities for remote actors and minority actors than ever before. I mean, we say minority, but they're the global majority, to be perfectly honest.
Hmm.
Um, I know that the battle continues to go on for updated wages. I know that we had the video game strike in 2016, and while we did get some improvements to the contracts, it was nowhere close to what we should have been aiming for and demanding at the beginning. Um, so I don't know, it's always in flux, no different than the trends that shift on the medium itself regarding what they look for in performances. Um, it's it's hard to say, there's times where it's full of drama, there's times where it's full of community and camaraderie. There's times where there's big wins for pay scale, there's times where there's not so big wins, and when it feels like we're fighting for fairer wages while companies are making money hand over fist on billions of dollars video game industry. So
Yeah, that
I
does make sense.
I don't consider myself I don't know if I can consider myself non-political when it comes to the industry, because part of caring for the industry is wanting to see improvements in it. But at the end of the day, I've always been more of a performer where I'm more focused on helping those around me succeed and doing the best job that I can do and being a good influence on the communities that support me. Um, and that's really my focus here. Is I don't think I could ever be a leader type when it comes to making sweeping changes throughout the industry, but I do like that I've been able to provide a bridge between the professional side and the amateur slash audience side, and be like, hey everyone, here's what my experience is like in the industry, here's stuff that you might not be aware of as consumers and as audience members, and for those of you interested in getting into voice acting, here are things that I have learned in my time so far that I want to impart on you, so that hopefully you can be better educated and succeed on a faster pace while avoiding the pitfalls that I couldn't have been prepared for when I started out.
So here's an important one I wanted to ask you. So when you're doing a voice acting job, what's your opinion on doing a good job versus just trying to rush to get it done?
Well, a good job is if you can perform the emotion that the character is displaying, and if you can keep in the character voice when you do that emotion. I would say that's what qualifies as a good job. You showed up, you followed the instructions, you gave the type, quote unquote, of performance that they're looking for. You did the thing. Where that differs from a great job is, can you perform it in a way that even you believe it? Like, are you just the actor pretending to be the character, or are you actually becoming this character in this world? Are you reacting the way that they would react? Are you understanding their psyche? Are you understanding why they're saying what they're saying, who they're saying it to, how they feel about the person that they're saying it to? And it's a lot of information to consider, but it's something that gets much easier to do the more that you do it, until it's essentially muscle memory. But that is what separates the good from the great. Is the good just seek to present and showcase and represent. The great become and are and embrace and tell the story. Yeah, on a very, very basic level, it is the difference between cluing the audience in that you are angry versus letting the audience figure out for themselves that you are angry based on your cadence and the way that you deliver. It is very easy to highlight certain words and make things precious in a way that's supposed to tell the audience, I am angry now, I am sad now, I am despondent now, versus being organic with the copy and living in the moment, however that comes out. Whether maybe the anger happens because there's a a twang in your voice that it doesn't normally have, and the audience picks up on that and says, "Ooh, something is off." Or maybe instead of shouting, there's like a grimace where it's like they can feel that your eyes are narrowed even though they can't actually see you on screen. Being able to convey those messages through your voice and let the audience join you on your journey instead of just telling them the story, that is what really separates the good from the cream of the crop.
Being that you do play video games, what ones would you say gave you inspiration to help you be a voice actor?
Well, I'm always enjoying games for different reasons. You know, I would say that while I do my best to study performances while I'm gaming, at the end of the day, I do try to leave time for myself just to game for the sake of gaming. Like, for
Hmm.
example, I'm playing Nexamon right now, which doesn't have any voice acting that I can think of. Um,
Yeah.
it's because I don't want my entire day, my entire week, my entire life to be consumed by a single focus, you know?
Hmm.
Even on my Twitch streams, while I will dub characters, I don't do it to get people into voice acting. I do it just because it's one of my only opportunities I have anymore to just enjoy games in the gaming industry. Um, but I would say in terms of genres, I enjoy first-person dungeon crawlers. I like ones where you have to build a party together of people from different classes that have different skills and ability trees. Um, for a while, I was a big fan of, collect-em-alls. I do like games with, monsters that you tame that fight by your side.
Hmm.
Although I particularly enjoy when they fight alongside you, not fight on your behalf, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that
Um,
does make sense.
so, like, if we could have something like Xenoblade Chronicles, but, like, it's me with the monsters that I've trained, fighting. So I would say even Ni no Kuni is probably closer to being the type of game that I'm
Yeah,
talking
when
about
when
rather
you
than.
were when you were saying that, I was thinking something like Legend of Mana or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, Legend of Mana was my personal favorite exactly because of that reason. Like, I would always have, like, the Sky Dragon or, one of the little Chobin Hoods, like, the special monsters following me around. That was a big thing for me. Um, yeah, so I enjoy that. I like action games a lot. I am a shameless Dynasty Warriors simp, and that's part of why I enjoyed Age of Calamity so much was because, oh my god, I got to play Dynasty Warriors, but as Revali, as Teba, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and I've also come to really enjoy good visual novels as well. A lot of DRPGs tend to also fall into the visual novel genre as well. Demon Gaze being a good example. 13 Sentinels was an action/strategy game with an incredible story. We're doing AI The Somnium Files and Nirvana Initiative, which I would definitely say lean extremely heavily on the story side. But with the continuous advancement of technology, the ability to tell visually interesting, cohesive, and interactive stories is only easier than before. And I really like that people are taking advantage of that to tell some really out there tales.
Speaking of Nintendo, I was kind of curious. How did you exactly come in contact with them? Was it like an agent, or did they just have like a casting call and then you just kind of auditioned, or?
Well, see, the thing is, this is where a lot of people get a misconception about like where in the process the game company comes in. When I originally was notified about the audition for what would become Breath of the Wild, I was not notified by Nintendo, nor did I find out through Nintendo. Bang Zoom, which was a company that I had done some anime dubs for in the past, reached out and said that there was a colleague studio or a sister studio that was looking for auditions for an upcoming project. And that if we were interested, that we could reach out to a certain email to get more details. And of course, I followed up, and that studio was Formosa Studios, which did the dubbing for Breath of the Wild, Age of Calamity, etc., etc. Reached out to them and got the audition that way. The only time that Nintendo got involved was probably in the background when discussing with the casting director, and then during the callbacks when they were listening in to decide who they wanted to cast for the characters. And even then, I wasn't aware that they were present. I only found out after the fact because they were on a Skype call with the casting director on the other side of the booth. So I didn't go to Nintendo's HQ to record. I didn't even directly interact with any Nintendo staff at any point. It was all through the recording studio itself. Now, that is not always the case. There have been times where, like when I recorded for Last of Us 2, I directly worked with people from Naughty Dog.
Hmm.
When I recorded from, I'm trying to think of examples. When I record for Shadowverse, I work directly with people at Side Games. So it depends on the client, depends on the studio. Some are more hands off than others. When I started ReZero during the first 2 sessions, Crunchyroll sat in just to make sure that the performance was what they wanted for the show. And then once they felt confident, they just went hands off and we did the entire rest of season 1 on our own, just myself in the dubbing studio.
Between the time for Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity, did you get contacted again for both of those, or was it like all together?
Yes, I believe it was through a different company the second time for Age of Calamity. I think that was with Halp Network at that point. But it was a case of, we have received word that we're going to be working on this project soon. We're interested in having you reprise your role. Would you still be available? Are you interested? What are the dates that you have available? And then we schedule stuff from there. Now, it's not always guaranteed. For example, during the Powerpuff Girls reboot, obviously we know that those actors, were replaced for younger actors.
Mm-hmm.
There was the famous thing with Metal Gear Solid 5, I think it was, where David Hayter didn't return as Snake.
Yeah.
So it's never a guarantee, but in general, unless there is a specific reason why the company doesn't want to use the same actors, it is fairly common that they will offer the role to the original actor who voiced them the first time around.
So, when you got the script for him, what inspired you to make his voice the way you did?
Well, it's a collaborative process. When I first came in, I definitely had a more showcasey, eccentric, sarcastic vibe that I think actually ended up better fitting the Japanese style of performance that they gave him. But then after I gave that, they said, okay, we like the base that we have, but we don't want it to be very showcasey. We want it to come from a place of confidence, of assuredness rather than cockiness. He's not trying to convince people that he's the best. He strongly believes that he is because of the time and effort that he's put in. I was like, okay, well, now that I have this information, I can make these tweaks. This is part of why being adaptive in the studio, being able to take direction and make adjustments and not be too married to any one specific idea is also incredibly important. And so on the times where I wasn't sure what I was doing, I leaned on my director and trusted them to guide me where I needed to go. Once I felt more confident, then I gently took those reins back and was able to control my own delivery, my own performance. So it's teamwork, The engineer wants you to sound great. The director wants you to sound as good as you possibly can, because that is how they get direction jobs in the future, is if they do a good job. So everyone there wants to succeed and they want you to succeed. So it's just a matter of having faith in that process and being willing to accept the help and work together in order to make a great product happen.
So, when it came to the different emotions that he felt, how hard was it to kind of change your pitch of voice and whatnot for that?
Well, as you can imagine, my normal voice is actually fairly close to Revali's,
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably someone like Teba, where I have to be, more cautious about how to portray a deeper role, but also keep it in that same area. You can see that even as I'm talking, I'm kind of making small tweaks on how breathy it is or how deep it is until I can hit just the right pocket for Teba. This is all part of the practice process. It's about exploring your vocal range and like, okay, well, what's an easier way for me to do this voice? How does this make my throat feel? What am I doing with my posture, with my body, with my throat in order to make that noise come out of my face? Does it hurt when I do it? Is there a way to do it that doesn't hurt me? These are all parts of the self-exploration, self-practice, self-reflection process that are important to growing as an actor, even outside of the performance booth.
What is your opinion on the love-hate relationship with Revali that people have? Like how some people love him, how some people hate him?
I mean, he's a video game character at the end of the day, so I try to remind people that he's not real as much as you would like him to be real. And at least in terms of me as an actor, I am not bothered by whether people love him or hate him. Both literally because I already got paid for the work, so your opinion on it is not going to affect the fact that I got paid. And I'm not saying that in terms of like, I don't care what you think, but that I don't let it bother me too much. But also, like, I understand why some people love him because they love the confidence that he has. I understand why some people hate him because they dislike that even after Link has proven that he is the hero, that Revali doesn't, finally relent and show a little bit more vulnerability versus what some of the other characters do. But a lot of people have said that's what makes him interesting. They like that he is different, you know? We're not going to be friends with every single person we meet in life. There are going to be people who respect us but still don't act cordial to us. And that's part of what makes him interesting, is that you can earn his respect, but that doesn't mean he's automatically going to become a radically different person than how he's been throughout his entire life. And that's just part of what makes him fun, you know? That's part of what brings that world to life and makes him distinct from other characters.
Well, I really do appreciate you taking your time out of your day to do this for me. It really means a lot.
No problem. No problem.